Welcome to This Explainer. Right now, we're unpacking something that is literally unprecedented in global geopolitics, the current pause in the US-Iran conflict. We're looking at a situation where the drums of war have, well, momentarily stopped beating, and they've been replaced by a really tense 60-day window for negotiations. But as you'll see, the silence on the battlefield is quickly being filled by massive, historical events on the ground. And honestly, this is the question that should be on everyone's mind right now. With millions mourning in the streets and a 60-day ticking clock on peace, what happens when the funeral ends? Because there's this stark, almost surreal contrast right now between the highly emotional reality on the ground in Iran and the high-stakes, closed-door diplomatic clock that is just ticking away internationally. To really understand the peace process, we have to understand this pause.
Section 1. The Funeral of Ali Khamenei.
To grasp the environment these negotiations are operating in, we really have to look at the streets of Tehran first. Okay, let's dive right into this. The scale of this mourning period is logistically and culturally massive. Following the US-Israeli strikes that killed the 86-year-old supreme leader on the very first day of the war, Iran kicked off a sweeping, multi-city, cross-border funeral route. We're talking days 1 through 3 in Tehran, day 4 moving to the holy city of Home, day 5 crossing international borders into Najaf and Karbala in Iraq, and finally, day 6, the burial in his birthplace of Mashhad. The airspace is completely closed. Daily life has just stopped. And to understand why life has completely stopped, you just have to look at the sheer scale of the crowds. Iranian officials are expecting anywhere between 15 and 20 million mourners to join these events. To put that staggering figure into perspective, that is roughly 1/4 of Iran's entire population. If those estimates hold up, we are looking at the largest state funeral in Iran's history. It's a massive mobilization with mourners dressed in black and many carrying red flags, which in Shiite Islam is a direct call for revenge. And this brilliantly illustrates the immense disconnect we're seeing right now between Washington and Tehran. On one hand, you have the rhetoric from the U.S. administration, with President Trump publicly stating, almost lightly, that the U.S. gave Iran a week off for a funeral because we're nice, emphasizing that Iran just wants to settle. But then, on the other hand, you have a much heavier, totally dead serious reality on the Iranian street. Eulogists and massive crowds are openly chanting for revenge against the U.S. and Israel, demanding blood for their slain leader. It's just a profound gap in public messaging. Section 2. A leadership in hiding. So while millions are highly visible out on the streets, there are these glaring voids at the very top of Iran's political structure. The biggest question inside Iran right now is, where is Mojtaba Khamenei? He's the slain leader's son and his designated successor as the new supreme leader. While 3 of his brothers actually made a rare public appearance at the funeral ceremonies, Mojtaba hasn't been seen in public since being named to the role. He's reportedly in hiding after being wounded in those initial US-Israeli airstrikes. So far, the new leader of the country has literally only communicated through written statements. But here's the crucial point. Nature abhors a vacuum, right? While the new supreme leader stays hidden, key military and political figures are stepping firmly into the public eye to project strength. We're seeing General Ahmad Vahidi of the powerful Revolutionary Guard emerge from hiding to sit right alongside the casket. We've got chief negotiator and parliament speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibafan rallying the public, and top military chiefs are actively vowing vengeance on state television. For all intents and purposes, they are the public face of the state right now. Section 3. The 60-day peace window. All right, let's shift our focus from those internal dynamics to the closed-door geopolitical negotiations. What is actually keeping the bombs from falling right now? It's the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding. This MOU establishes a maximum 60-day window for negotiations to hammer out a final deal and formally end the war. It's a highly fragile framework. It's being mediated by Qatar and Pakistan, and right now that 60-day clock is effectively paused to allow for those massive funeral proceedings we were just talking about. And despite all the fiery rhetoric you hear out in public, behind the scenes, diplomats are reporting a surprisingly different tone. The Qatari Ministry of Foreign Affairs recently stated that positive progress was actually made during the indirect talks between U.S. and Iranian negotiators in Doha right before the pause. And the fact that these are indirect talks highlights just how sensitive this is. They aren't even speaking face-to-face, but there is some real diplomatic momentum there. Section 4. The nuclear sticking point. That momentum, though, it's going to run headfirst into some massive roadblocks. From the United States' perspective, the core objective of this conflict is exceptionally clear. As President Trump put it, this is not a war per se. This is the denuking of Iran. The U.S. is heavily, laser-focused on permanently preventing Iran from holding any kind of nuclear weapons capability. But actually achieving that is a massive logistical and diplomatic nightmare. According to analysts, Iran currently has a stockpile of about 900 pounds of highly enriched uranium. And look, this isn't just sitting in a warehouse somewhere. It's believed to be buried deep beneath the Isfahan nuclear facility. That's a facility that was itself severely damaged by U.S. strikes during the war. So just getting to it, let alone figuring out how to deal with it, is physically and politically incredibly complex.
And geopolitical experts are warning that half measures simply won't cut it here. Spencer Faragasso from the Institute for Science and International Security points out that while the minimum methodology suggests downblending the uranium, which basically means diluting it for civilian use, that still leaves Iran with a long-term path to nuclear capability. He argues that physically removing the uranium entirely is the only real solution for the U.S. But, crucially, there is absolutely no indication yet that Iran is willing to completely surrender its stockpile.
Section 5. Battle for the Strait. Now, what's really interesting here is how this second massive roadblock has direct, immediate implications for your wallet. The Strait of Hormuz is a vital artery for global energy. Before the war, it saw about 130 to 138 ships pass through every single day. Due to the conflict and Iranian strikes, that just ground to a halt. While we are seeing a slow rebound during this peace window, jumping from 138 ships in a week to 258 ships in a week, it is still drastically below those pre-war daily averages. The global supply chain is basically still choking. And the main reason shipping hasn't fully rebounded is because of these irreconcilable demands at the negotiating table. The U.S., backed by allies like the UK and France, along with Oman, demand totally free navigation through the strait. Iran, however, demands recognition of its sovereignty over the waterway and insists on the right to charge service fees, or tolls, to passing ships once the 60-day window closes. These two positions are fundamentally at odds, and they represent a huge hurdle in Doha. Section 6. The Regional Ripple Effect. Let's zoom out for a second to examine how this fragile pause is impacting the broader Middle East. That staggering figure of 646,107, that represents internally displaced Lebanese citizens who have finally begun returning to their homes, according to the International Organization for Migration. Lebanon was drawn into this conflict early on, but the U.S.-Iran pause has created a localized ceasefire there, allowing hundreds of thousands to return, even as 500,000 others still remain displaced. But please don't mistake a pause for permanent stability. When you tie these diverse facts together, you really start to see how incredibly interconnected this conflict is. Israel is refusing to leave a 6-mile security zone in southern Lebanon. The militant group Hezbollah is entirely rejecting the U.S.-brokered ceasefire framework. Over in Yemen, the Iran-backed Houthis are threatening to strike Saudi airports over alleged airspace violations. And globally, OPEC Plus is having to expand oil production by hundreds of thousands of barrels a day just to stabilize energy prices rocked by the war. Which, by the way, is exactly what keeps your energy bills from skyrocketing. The U.S.-Iran conflict truly dictates the stability of the entire region and the global markets. Which leaves us with this final thought. We have a hidden leadership in Iran, we've got intractable disputes over nuclear material and global shipping lanes, and a highly volatile region hanging by a thread. When the 60 days expire and the mourning ends, will these nations find a permanent peace or plunge the region back into full-scale war? The stakes over these next few weeks honestly could not be higher. Thank you so much for joining this explainer, and